Hey everybody, Sluggernaut here. Just wanted to try and take you all through what I've been up to lately. I'm in final project now. As you should know, I did a couple demos for our initial, what do we call it, like sort of design phase. This is really almost pre-design phase, what I made those demos for, just to kind of see what we should start designing. Well, anyway, our networked game was picked, and we're getting pretty hard into it now. I've done the rendering for the game so far, so anything you see on the screen here, except for animations, I haven't. While I have helped our animation guy call animation rendering and helped him a little bit with that, he's pretty much done anything animation you see. But everything else you see is all me. Oops. So. Yeah, I just got Shadows working. Well, actually, I got Shadows working about a week ago now. It's today, Wednesday now, technically. So I'm pretty proud of that. I got some pretty sweet-looking shadows in. The how I have it working is I have a frustum for the player and another one for the entire level. And the frustum for the player follows him around to keep this level of detail on the shadow here. Because if you pull it way out, it starts getting really pixelated, as you can see for the shadow here. I haven't done any blending yet. I basically just got these shadows the way I want them as far as how they would display. And the player himself actually just has a directional light pixel shader he's running through, and he's not casting his own shadows on himself. I just have the angle of the quote-unquote directional light syncing up with the angle that the frustum stays from the player. So the camera moves around the player as we go, or sorry, moves around, but the frustum stays in a fixed world position from the player. It should look a little choppy right now. Unfortunately, it's just because I'm running the recording software. It seems to be killing my video card a bit, so it's got some pretty choppy motion, unfortunately, so it makes a bad demo for me. So what we got here, I just went for some occlusion. We were having trouble. You couldn't see the player behind, any obstacles. It was getting a little crazy, so I actually just added in the fading out / removal of verts. I've also done any of the input you see, so any movement or anything is done by me, mouse movement and any other input I did. And the physics, as far as actually moving things, placing them in the world, moving them in real time, that sort of thing. Didn't do the particle effects, so whatever movement they're using was probably set up by me as far as just using my movement functions. So yeah, that and yeah, I've got my sweet After Effects. Actually just took a couple out earlier. I was messing around with them. And I caused this break earlier, unfortunately, so I'm showing you a crappy build that I broke. But I have to go fix that. Right now I'm working on changing the resolution of the game on the fly. So I was working with our DirectX Pro lab instructor from school here a minute ago, and going through the swap chain resize buffers, where you can basically just change the resolution again on the fly. So our game here, let me show it off a little bit better. It's actually a networked game. Unfortunately, I have to just open 2 instances of the same game on my computer at once. I don't have anybody here to actually play with. The background you see here, the clouds here, is a pixel shader that I did. I found on Shader Toy. There's a bin. I want to show you guys a couple of things. I'm not going to get in yet. So yeah, it's a pixel shader that's just running on a quad that I fit to the size of the screen. And I checked it out. I thought it might actually be taking a little too much processing power, but I think it made a 1 frame per second difference. So we went from like 97 frames a second to 96, or some high numbers to a slightly smaller number. A couple of my teammates were complaining and said they thought it was slowing down the game. It's not. I proved it. So, oh yeah, I can't put numbers in my name. Sluggernut. Oh, with a nice capital L there. Oh well. So, Sluggernut's in. The default person here is the person about to connect that hasn't connected yet. So we connect him and we can see that yeah, he is in now and his name has been changed from default. So let's make him, let's make the water guy. Let's make him the, what did you guys see before, the earth guy, I think. This fire guy, we got him and he's got some sort of really weird messed up hand and we don't know how or why. So that was kind of an odd anomaly, but every other animation we've ever imported has worked, so it has to be the character there. So he readies up, he does his little bow. Again, this wasn't really set up by me. These systems weren't set up by me. I just ensured that the rendering wouldn't break, basically. So calling the correct... oh yes, we have our nice... So you saw on the in the screen on the... Let's unlock this mouse here and get up in this game. The screen on the right, we have a weird translation malfunction when they... So it's all to do with our... So this is a networked game, so our server is trying to match up, tell you like where a player is, but it also attempts to interpolate that player so that when you... let's get this guy moved around. So when you... Yeah, alright. Let's just play from here. So, you can see when I move, it hopefully it doesn't, if you look on the right screen, like, you'll see, if you really look, but this is again for looking for it, you'll see a slide, and the animation is synced up. The slide has to catch up. That's the interpolation of the movement. If you stay moving like you should be, you'll never notice that. So we're going to fix that interpolation eventually. When he moves, man, when it's lagging like this, the shadow almost doesn't match up. That's kind of funny because it should all work in real time. Like where he is where the shadow picks to be. There's no like server lag from the shadow to the player. Very interesting. I'm going to have to mess with that a little bit more. So, got our nice pixel shader. If you get damaged here, if you look on the right screen right now, if you get damaged, I've got my nice little pixel shader there, coloring him. Boom, boom, boom. Save him a couple more times, and bam, he's killed by the basic attack. And yeah, his screen turns gray, sinks into the ground. He's got a little countdown until he respawns, and then boom, he's back. Let's see, what else do we have? We've got our, that's our lob attack. This one's interesting. Oh, did we fix the bug finally? Oh, I'm stoked. Excellent, excellent. So we've got our lob here, and it does tons of damage, and you can shoot it like around corners or past an obstacle. Any other spell you have is gonna get hit. Is gonna hit a collide with an object. I mean, these can collide with the world too, but basically these allow you to, or that particular spell allows you to shoot over an obstacle that's between you and the player. So we've got that one, and then we've got our cone ability. I attached lights to all of the spells, so it's a little, unfortunately the choppiness makes it a little hard to see. It's a little slow, but yeah. So every time anybody casts a spell that's not an auto attack, this is just our little auto attack. It does a decent amount of little bit of damage, kinda, and so yeah. Anyway, so it's pretty much where we're at right now. Lucas, who did the pickups here, I guess, found some sort of auto-tune program or something to change his voice for when you pick up the items. And that's pretty much it. That's most of what I've been up to. The systems I have set up. So I've got a nice 2D system set in that I made a year ago now with my old engine that I showed off a while back. That actually is one of the most stable things I've ever created. It's never changed since we got it. Since we implemented it for text and displaying, anything really. Let me return here. So yeah, I mean, displaying of any 2D object has been very nice and simple. Um, so yeah, there we go. That's what it looks like if you don't render anything at all, just for the fun of it all. There's our hitboxes. What else we got? Anything? I think that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, and change the resolution. This is my change the resolution currently. I had like literally just implemented this like a couple of hours ago to the most basic point, and then let Tom, you know, have his evening basically. It's taking up his time. So pretty much when I got to the gist of what I needed to do and I could help myself, I left. So and again, our embarrassing break, my bad. So let me go over a couple of systems here real quick. The renderer, I've got my adding post-process effects are in a nice little couple of functions here. You can send it in by name, and I'll find the name that you're looking for and add that to a post-process, and then you send in a time, or you just send in if you have the actual pixel shader you want to use as a post-process effect. What I've got going on actually is, let me scroll way up, tons of pixel shaders, delta time buffer, a couple of light descriptions here for the, so the two things that are casting shadows, one is casting for the player and the other is casting for the rest of the objects in the scene that I have tagged as shadow-giving objects. So like our spells I haven't tagged as a shadow-giving object. I could, and it wouldn't be too much trouble. Oh my goodness. This always happens when I record recently. It's kind of strange. Hopefully that didn't mess up the video any. So those shadow-giving objects you have tagged and not tagged for whatnot. I have two frustums for them, and they do a pre-render basically. When I call render, or when the render process starts, it renders the player, sends that into one texture, renders the level and the things that I have casting shadows into another texture, and then I sample from both of those in a pixel shader here. So I've got my two textures here, two shadow textures. The player one comes in for Shadow Sampler. There's Shadow Sampler and Shadow Sampler 3D. These needed to be different, just basically due to the texture that they sample, and I had them actually just sampling whatever texture I sent in at first. I need to clean that up. It's not being used anymore. But I needed to change it due to the variation. The frustum for the entire level was pulled so far back that I was getting really bad issues with floating point precision. And so I made that a higher set of precision first, and it still wasn't actually good enough. I was like, the objects I was trying to shadow in the or give shadows in the level were actually putting shadow on themselves, like on the front of themselves instead of just the back, due to, again, just the floating point precision not being good enough. So that was a bit annoying. It just took a little bit of finagling. So here we're actually adding this 1/10,000th to the depth, and using that for our comparison from our texture sample here of our original depth that we had, and giving that add makes sure that the shadow is going to be in the backside of the object from again, such a poor floating point precision. Whereas the player, we're actually subtracting this bias due to floating point imprecision and the depth's not matching up. It's kind of funny. And also, if the player shadow is not been registered as being part of this pixel that we're about to put down on the level or on any other object that should have a shadow on it, it returns zeros, so that our if check down here we can say, well, if the X, Y, and Z are all 0, then boom, do this and see if you don't have a player shadow, well, do you have a shadow from anything else that's casting a shadow? And then we go through that texture and see if those numbers match up. And then of course we do our general texture sampling and check to see if a light is in the area with this. My lights that are inactive, so I'm using a constant buffer for the lights, and I believe I have a size of 30. Yeah, so I have 30 lights that you can go through, but if their position.x is set to 100, then just don't check. So my level is small enough now. I should probably make it if like the Y is 1,000, because definitely my level will never ever be in a place where that would not be true, or you know, like negative float max or whatever. There's a few different things you can do, but I just chose to put 100 since I know our levels nowhere near that size and nowhere getting near this destination. So if the light is active is what this really means, and if this pixel is within the intensity units of the light, which I think all of my lights right now have an intensity of 3. So if you're within 3 quote-unquote units, distance units, then you need to be lit with that color. And then that's it. So I have final color here. I have this color, and that's multiplicative blending for the final color. The final color here, which is really just the texture sample, so our ambient color with no shading, has really an additive blending for the color, for the light color, and then a multiplicative blending for the shadow color, which is almost kind of funny, but I got it to look really good, and I just kind of went with it. I don't know if it's mathematically accurate, but it definitely looks good in my opinion. I believe I have the shadows giving off a 0.5. Yeah. So they're just cutting the color in half with their multiplicative blending here, which is what I wanted. And then the additive blending is how light really works. That's pretty much it. For the lighting, the renderer here, I'm pretty proud of my post-process effects. This is our add D2D. This is, still add D2D. This is where we add models. If you're trying to add a D3D object, which is any sort of mesh that you saw there, a 3D mesh. Then we've got our pre-render comes in, sets up our general viewports and everything. And then the background that you saw, those clouds swirling in the background, that's from this here. This is just that texture, and it has a pixel shader attached to it, and my render 2D basically looks for a pixel shader attached to the texture, if I can find it. So yeah, if you have a pixel shader attached, then run that pixel shader, blah blah blah. So pretty simple setup, and of course in the init of the renderer here, I create that background image, quote unquote image, because it's not really just an image, it's a texture that the pixel shader pastes colors onto to give it that look. And then yeah, that pixel shader is ran every frame. Same deal for anything in the 3D. So yeah, if you saw the player getting like lit on quote unquote like fire, he looks like he has sort of lava on him. That's my lava shader, and if a mesh has a lava shader on it, it gives it that textured lava-y, flowy look to it, that fiery look to it, and comes through here and runs that. Otherwise, it just runs our standard pixel shader, vertex shader, or whatever. Or if there's no texture, I have setups for that. So if you have I think you saw the colored boxes on the ground. They're like blue and green and magenta. Those don't have a texture. The user / one of my fellow programmers is just sending in a color that I take in, and I'm just outputting that color all over that mesh that he wants. But my post-process effects. So we come in, everything that we've rendered up to this point has been rendered to a texture. So I take in that texture and I draw it with, I basically just draw it out, and I'm drawing to another texture now. So we've set our render target texture 2 here. So we just rendered to that. So now I have this nice image drawn, and I can run this through two-dimensional textures. This is why I'm drawing a texture to a texture. Basically, if I have any post-process effects set, i.e. the black and white shade that you saw earlier when somebody died, and the entire screen goes black and white for the 3 seconds that they're dead, I've called that and told it to run for the 3 seconds or however long you're dead. that comes in, clears the render target. I had to do this basically because I'm switching between two render targets and two textures that the render targets are attached to, and you can't switch to a render target while that texture is attached. It's a very odd process. Basically, if you're familiar with the process, you know I had to do this. If you're not, it's a little hard to explain, but basically you can't say, hey, you're a texture, let me render to you. Hey, you're a render target, or you're a texture, let me get information from you to render with. Hey, you're a render target, let me render to you, while you're still a texture that I'm pulling information from. So there's this switch back and forth that I go through to render between render target texture and render target texture 2, and I need an intermediary to switch to before that kind of clears out what I'm doing, and then of course I present. And yeah, PS, yeah, the constant buffer, color buffer, blah blah blah, and then basically I present to the screen. So, and I set my shader resource view, blah blah blah. That's pretty much it. Nothing really special going on after this. So anyway, yeah, I've tested it out where I've got, you know, jeez. Let's see if I can do it real quick. Let's see, add post process, and let's just do grayscale. Add post process. I think it's water P shader. Water. P shader. So, I mean, what this should do is make everything grayscale for 100 seconds and watery for 100 seconds. I'll show you what I mean by watery once it's done. So, boom. There we go. There's our watery grayscale post-process effects that are going to run for 100 seconds. Screws up the screen pretty bad, but that was kind of the point when I was looking at it and creating it. Yeah, we're going to get our... Oh, yeah, we didn't get our crash because we haven't done the instantiated the game yet. So, yeah. Again, I'm pretty proud of that. So, anywhere anybody has a reference to the renderer and is trying to render anything, they can also just say, hey, run this post-process effect with his name, or run this post-process effect with this pixel shader that I have an actual pointer to for this long. Done. Again, my entire philosophy for coding so far, and I think it's gone really well, has been designing the end game. What do I want my users to be typing in, and what do they need to be doing to make anything that I make work and do what they want to do, and how little can I have them type to make that work properly and exactly how they want to do it. So yeah, render 2D, render 3D, pretty simple. You just send in the most basic parameters that I could ask for. What do you want to render, and how do you want it to display, i.e. if you have a pixel shader. If you don't have a pixel shader, then it'll just skip on that and do the standard stuff, you know, etc., etc. And I really think it's worked out really well. Luckily, we've had a pretty smooth transition or development cycle so far. We've gotten some pretty high marks as a team, and I have personally, and I'm really proud of that. So, looking forward to the next installment. If anybody has any questions, let me know. I guess I'll go through the lighting real quick. Got my shutdown. There's animations. I didn't really do any of this stuff. So yeah, this is where you add lights. And yeah, basically I look for the first light in my container that has a position X of 100, and then boom, I give it a color, intensity, and position. I can remove a light. Yeah, number 99. That means basically if you tried to add a light and you get 99 back, then I was out of lights to give you. And if you get this number and you try and send it back to me like, hey, we'll render this light, and it's number 99, then I just skip it. I don't attempt to ever render or remove number 99. Yeah, update light. Oh, geez. yeah, so this is where instead of checking if it's 99, it just makes sure it's, you know, a number that's legitimate. It's basically not, or yeah, it's under my number of maximum lights that I can have. Same here, same here. Actually, it looks like I should put that there. So, anyway. Render sphere, render capsule, render sphere, render capsule. This was some stuff we set up for rendering those, that I set up, I guess, for rendering those meshes that you saw for collisions. It was just spheres. The capsule was basically 2 spheres. I don't actually render the lines that go in between them to actually make them a capsule, but it wasn't important at the time, and I just never got around to it, and it isn't important now, so I probably never will. We don't have any capsules that are like so large that you couldn't see the endpoints or anything like that. So our pre-light pass, we basically set up our viewport, clear our render target views, and and again, these render target views and depths are for our shadow frustums. So we're going to render to a texture and then sample that texture for depth later on. And then we've got a depth stencil view. So I don't set those yet, because if I'm rendering an animation, I need to set one render target, because again, the animations have their animation has his own render target, and then the static objects have their own render target. What I'm about to do is actually set up an if check in here. So if you're trying to render an enemy player, because I don't know if you guys noticed, hopefully you didn't, the enemy players didn't have any shadows underneath them. That's because only your player gets sent through this render target. Again, because the frustum is so close to the player for that good detail, I would have to add a whole nother frustum for the other player, and anyway, it would be a whole mess if I didn't fix this, and I haven't done it yet, basically. So I need an if check in here. Basically, if you're not our player, then you need to use this render target and render to him, and use this depth stencil view. So that's pretty much it. We end up with 2 different textures that are filled out, and once we're done, we basically clear state and make sure we're not getting shadows anymore. That's pretty much it. And this this bool here, which is also set when we start, is basically what I check for. If you try and call renderer and I say, hey, I'm actually just trying to render shadows right now, then it'll do this. It'll get into this if check first and get out. I could have just done an else statement here, basically, for the rest of the function instead of a return, but as far as I know, it doesn't make a difference. This is one of those weird little coding practices. I don't know what's the better way to go, if else for the rest of the function, or just a return. So what's better, what's quicker, blah blah blah. So that's pretty much it. So yeah. Again, if anybody ever has any questions, let me know.